Hello, welcome back to my Japanese learning series. This is the first ever update video after last month's kickoff, and I hope you noticed that the audio quality has improved since last time. I did my best, but let me know if something's off about the audio and I will try and fix it. Now, let's see how I've progressed since last time. I hope you all have been able to improve as well. Obviously each at your own stage and speed, which is all 100% fine. Now, first things first, I'm going to describe what I've done since last month, or since the last time we met, and how it worked for me. This is going to be different from person to person, so no resource is objectively better than any other. Let's cover some basic stats and the timeline first. So I spent about a total of 83 hours this month with learning Japanese. 40% of it was Take-Him, so grammar, with 34 hours. 31% was Immersion with 26 hours. Then Anki comes in with just above 14% at 12 hours. And then 4.5% each for pitch accent, hiragana, and katakana, which comes out to 3.5 hours each. I set up some daily goals on Toggle on the first Sunday, which those are 50 minutes of Anki every day and 1 hour of Immersion every day. And Anki's unbroken since, which is now 23 days. And then I broke my Immersion streak last weekend because I was lazy. And it's now at 8 again, but before that it was unbroken as well. Now, at first I started out with hiragana and katakana, like I said, which took about 2 hours each as like an upfront effort, and then always a couple of minutes on the following days. But yeah, since it's only hiragana and katakana and it's 2 hours each, I was done unexpectedly quick after 2 days. And then after practicing just hiragana and katakana and doing nothing else on the third day, I just decided to move on and start with Anki and Japanese grammar. Then on the first Sunday, I started with the beginner podcast of Nihongo Kontepei, which is Nihongo Kontepei for beginners. I started immersing during my morning routine and commute to work, which works really well for me, I've found. And I do pitch accent in Anki in my breakfast/lunch break, and then in the evening I spend about an hour on Take-Him. On home office days, I didn't have the commute to work, so my routine looked a little different, generally more lazy. So I usually resorted to doing some mindless tasks in some game I was playing or listening while preparing dinner. Now let's have a little bit of a closer look at all the different resources I used. So first up are the books for Kana, which these books are about 70 pages each, which is actually way less than it looks, and it took just about 2 hours to complete, like I just said. Personally, I did it on my tablet that I use for my studying, but a checkered piece of paper and the document open somewhere probably does the trick. There's a little bit of writing practice in there, but it's not the focus of the book. The writing definitely helps with remembering what the kana means. So the basic structure of those books is that there is 1 page per letter, which sounds a lot, but there's really not much on each page. Then there's 1 page of extra practice per column of hiragana characters, and then another page after like 3 to 4 columns where it's just practice. At the end of the book, it's revealed that Dakuten and Handakuten exists, as well as the introduction of smaller exceptions. This is easy for hiragana because there's only 3 exceptions to those rules, and it's a little harder for katakana because you get everything that hiragana gets, but in addition you also get like 4.5 more rows of combinations and more exceptions. Now, at the very end of the document, there's a quiz or a link to a quiz website where you can like practice your knowledge. And the website is really easy to understand and use. I'm not sure if their Romaji notation is the official one or if there even is an official notation. As far as I know right now, the book doesn't really leave out any information except that For hiragana, you can also use long vowels, so it introduces in katakana that there's like the dash to show that it's a long vowel. And in hiragana, you do the same, but you just use a specific vowel again. So for I and E, you use I again. Now, hiragana was very easy to learn with mnemonics, and it took about 2 hours to get through. And at the end, you're surprised with dakunen and handakunen, like I just said, and the characters are, in my opinion, really distinct and easy to tell apart, except for some minor ones like, let me butcher this, nu me or neware or roru, but they're still pretty easy. Like, there's still major characteristics that you can use to tell them apart. Now, the katakana is slightly more difficult for me, maybe because my head was full. I found the mnemonics slightly less helpful because a lot of the katakana looked more samey to me. The only thing that I found funny is that I had a very tiny advantage as a German person for ni, which is because ni are two parallel lines that never touch, and in German, never means ni. I really struggled with some of the letters. Still now, or at least certain ones, aren't used too often. For me, at first it was difficult to tell apart so, n, or shitsu, or putawaku, sunufu, and koyu, because they look very similar, but eventually got the hang of it. But yeah, overall, katakana and hiragana were fairly easy. I got done with them quick. I expected it to take a lot longer because somebody told me that if you really want to, you can get them down in a couple of days. Because I didn't want to put that much effort into, I thought it would take longer, but it really was just those 2 hours and then like 15 minutes of practice every day after, which is almost nothing. You can find 15 minutes in every day. Now let's take a look at Anki. Anki was okay. Kanji are a pain in the ass. The example sentences from the deck that I chose, which is Kaishi 1.5k, really helped. But there's some words that are still difficult, like sore, dore, ano, are. Don't pay attention to pitch accent. I don't know. I haven't looked it up. It's probably all wrong. But they mean like that over there, that one, this one, and I can't really tell them apart, except for sore at this point. This is because they all use the same example sentence, which is just like that book over there, which really doesn't help, because if it's this book or that book over there or that book or this one book, it's kind of the same sentence. So I had to repeat those a lot. I think I had them every day for 5 days in a row, and then I just gave up and said, okay, yeah, well, I mean, I get the gist, it's that or this or that one over there. I'll just skip it and pick up the difference in immersion. Then oftentimes in example sentences, they use multiple new vocab that you learn on that day, which helps to remember them, to like connect them together. But sometimes it's also multiple words that they don't teach you, so then you just have a sentence that you can read as an example sentence, and you can't use anything to remember the kanji that you don't know. That might be a good thing, because I feel like I'm relying heavily on the example sentences. Probably it just takes time to actually remember what the kanji are translated to or read as, because it's really hard to remember kanji. But I think now at the end of the month, I get the impression that it gets easier as you get more words that use the same kanji. And obviously at the start, you learn 100 words and like 80 new kanji, which is just a lot, but that gradually decreases as time goes on. For example, the kanji for ima, kondo, or konkai, or kyo, I really like that kanji at this point, because obviously I probably don't know all the readings, but when I get it, I always know, okay, it has something to do with time, probably. It's either kon if it's used together with something else, and then there's this one word, so I think it really gets easier as time goes on. It is kind of a separate aha moment once you see that some kanji are the same across different words and they have the same pronunciation. One thing that should go without saying, but I obviously didn't realize. So I'm gonna say it that you need to be, or I needed to be really focused and do my best to remember every word, and then also not default to just looking at the answer, because if you just look at the answer, you're only ever gonna have it in your short-term memory. If you never have that moment where you're like, it's like shitsure shimasu, something with re. It's shitsure shimasu, and then you click and it's there, and that helps you remember it. If you just like, well, that's two kanji that I don't remember, and there's like 10 words that have shimasu, and there's no example sentence because the entire example sentence is just this one word. So I'll just look at the answer. Then 10 minutes later you're gonna know it, but tomorrow you're not. Now, let's talk about Take Him, a Japanese guide to Japanese grammar. The book starts off pretty comprehensible when reading through, but then obviously as time goes on, the rules compound, and in example sentences they use grammar from earlier stuff, so you can't translate as easily. It's a comfortable read. Sometimes there's some jokes built in. It has lots of examples built into the different sections, but it's not designed to give you any useful Japanese straight away. The author makes a big point about approaching it from a Japanese point of view and not trying to bend rules so you can use some sentence, but you can never use the grammar that you learned anywhere else. So they start from the ground up, which I think just makes sense. The way that each chapter is structured is that you get a section of necessary vocab at the start. After that, most of the time, they have a little explain text that explains what the section is about or how to use this grammar / particle or expression, and then lots of examples where they provide the actual translation that makes sense when reading it in English, and they also give a literal translation. Now, like I said, I first started with just reading through the book, and I'd always translate the examples without trying to cover the translations and try to get the correct meaning, which is easy enough at first. It just takes some time because you need to look up the words and stuff. And because of this grammar study, I was actually able to guess the meaning of one new word that I had in Anki based off of the context, which I was really proud of. But since then, it hasn't happened too often because my foundation is really wacky at the moment. So then obviously after some time it picked up because the rules compound and I wasn't able to translate the examples as quickly, so I slowed down, and then eventually I decided to stop with reading and switch over to take notes, which with the intent behind it that I can look up grammar that I had earlier because I was taking notes. But with that thought in mind, I headed over to taking notes, but I didn't really use the notes to translate any of the examples later on and try and get it correct. I just took notes and I kind of got complacent, taking notes, listening to music, just vibing. So I realized that I need to change something because I'm not actually keeping any of the knowledge, and I know I said in the kickoff video that I don't just want a ground level understanding and I don't want to know everything, but it's just frustrating if they tell you what the neat particle does in the first section and you don't remember it 2 days later. That would basically, to me, be like reading something once, then forgetting about it, and I have to learn the entire grammar of Japanese through immersion alone, which I don't think is feasible. Now to my notes about pitch accent. Pitch accent was easy to get into. I kind of pushed it off at the start, but then when I started with Take Him, I decided to just look at it again, and I found that it's really easy. So you just have to accept that you understand what their notation looks like, and then you just get an audio sample played automatically. And you select which of one of the two notations is correct according to your opinion. And then most of the time it's 2 options, sometimes it's 3 options. For every sample that you do or get correct or wrong, they show you how many tests you've done and what the percentage is where you were right. And it also breaks it down by all the different pitch accent types. This test I found is easier on my desktop because for some reason I only get the same voice actor that does all the lines, and he speaks very clearly. So maybe it's helpful to start out on a desktop because it's just one voice actor. But eventually, like when I did the pitch accent tests during my breakfast break, I used my cell phone, and on that version they have like 4 to 5 different voice actors, and one of those voice actors is really hard for me because his heiban, so technically in quotes flat word, it has a drop at the end, a significant drop, and that makes me confuse it with other types a lot. Now, I feel like I've gradually improved. I think I started out at like 80% and I'm now at like 87%, fairly consistently, but it varies a lot because the test is not that long. I eventually took a look at Dogen's pitch accent playlist, which gave me the impression that I need to put much more effort into pitch accent to not have a foreign accent in the end. I started looking into that, but was really busy with other stuff and I neglected it. This month, I will definitely put more effort into understanding pitch accent, and maybe I'll find some new resources that I can try. For immersion, I found that immersing during my daily commute is very easy and it feels very comfortable because I don't really have anything else to do in that time. And when I don't have something that I have to do daily, it's a lot harder for me because I have to go out of my way to do something that is suitable for immersion, which obviously is like another hurdle that requires motivation to overcome. So it might be best to figure out a way how to get rid of that hurdle, or at least lower it, so when my motivation is less, I can still continue doing it. But that might also just improve as my understanding gets better, so I can maybe just listen to the podcast for the sake of listening to the podcast and not looking at it as immersion, because I can actually understand stuff. I first started out with Nihongo Kontepe for beginners, and people say that you shouldn't start with baby talk podcasts, but I knew 70 words at the time where I started, and it was a nice introduction because the podcast starts in the same way every time and ends in the same way every time. The episodes are really short, about 4 minutes, where there's one word that is repeated very often. So even with my limited understanding, because he was speaking slow, I could usually understand what kind of word it should be. But then in the end, I was able to look up the word, but it didn't really do much. So I kind of felt like listening to that doesn't really help me build an ability to listen at native speaker speed, and it also doesn't teach me vocabulary. So I switched to the normal podcast of Nihongo Kontepe after 3 days. Now the normal version requires a lot more concentration, which leads me to get sidetracked a lot more, which is definitely a downside. There's like some words you understand, but then they're conjugated in some way, and you have to think about, okay, well, this word is kind of new, and I think that's what it means. Yeah, it means that. Yeah, I think yoru means night. And then you picked up that word, but then you spend probably not as long as I just demonstrated, but like a second to think about it and confirm what you think it means. And then the sentence is somewhere completely else. He's said 3 sentences in the meantime. So you can't really understand sentences. You can pick out certain phrases, and sometimes you still get like aha moments. You have like, oh, so this means he said X. But even if you don't have words that you spend some time on thinking about what it means, for me, maybe I have ADHD brain or something, it was basically just generally hard to focus. Sometimes I get caught up in thoughts like, I'm should be listening right now and focusing, and I need to talk about this on the episode. I'd have like useless thoughts like that. But yeah, it was really hard. I didn't understand a lot. I got sidetracked a lot. Obviously a couple aha moments, but not too many. I'm definitely not able to understand sentences yet, and like I fear that I might not get good because I understand so little. How can this help me? But I know that it will help me, and you'll see in a couple of months. I will see in a couple of months. But yeah, I just wanted to voice those doubts in my head for anyone that's listening and having those same doubts, because I think about this too. I just know that it's the beginning. It's hard. So I'll try something different in this coming month, and we'll see just how it goes, because obviously I won't stay at this level of understanding for all time. That's just impossible. My plan for this month is to continue adding 10 words every day. It feels good right now. There's some ups and downs where like my review count increases to 40 or something and then it goes down again, but I've grown used to it, that it takes between 20 and in the worst case 40 minutes if I'm slacking. But yeah, it feels good right now, so I'm just gonna continue like this. And I want to finish up taking notes on the grammar, which I have about 70 pages left. So maybe by the end of this week, I'm already done by the time that this video comes out. But I also wanted to try making flashcards for grammar, which I think it works well for at least the earlier stages because there's not too much information crammed into one thing. It's easy to say like, the ni particle is applied to this and it means that, and when used with a moving, it means that. That's like 3 keynotes, but later on it's like, soda is kind of similar to so, but you have to add da to nouns and stuff, and all of that is wrong. Don't listen to that, but there's a lot of more nuance and rules that the book adds. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll just do those flashcards for basic grammar, which probably makes sense, but I'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll realize quickly that it doesn't work, but I'm hopeful that I can maybe like do flashcards in Anki and add a particle, and then I just review it just like I would with everything else, and then I spend some time doing new flashcards, then I spend time learning it, and then I also spend time reviewing the flashcards that I already made. Then, like I said earlier, I want to take a closer look at pitch accent because I kind of got the impression that spending time on this is more important than I thought. And I also feel like 10 minutes every day is not too effective. There's a slight improvement to be seen, definitely. So it's not completely ineffective, but there's definitely more I can do. So I'll research a little bit into what I can do and tell you next month what I did. But also, if you already have some suggestions, please let me know and I'll look into it and use it, or maybe not. We'll see. Then for immersion, I need to figure out a way where I can immerse well, because starting just after this video comes out, my daily schedule changes and I don't have that kind of routine anymore, so it might be harder for me to do the actual immersion part. So I thought about maybe I'll watch some slice of life anime or romance anime with Japanese subtitles, and obviously Japanese audio. As I'm watching right now, Japanese audio with German or English subtitles, I also notice already that if I see English words that I know I should know, I sometimes even go back to see if it's the word that I think it was. And maybe I hear stuff that differs from what the translation says, and I'll think about how the translation might have changed things, but obviously my understanding isn't that deep and I shouldn't stick to English subtitles. So the Japanese subtitles are to help me notice words that I should recognize because I've already learned them through Anki, but I just didn't pick it up just because of the speed of the conversation. Now all I have left to say is thanks for watching, and I put a lot of effort into this video, so I'd be glad if you enjoyed it and maybe you could already take some information away from it. And if you have any resources that you would like me to try or that you have heard about or any other suggestions, please don't hesitate to tell me. And yeah, I'm glad that you made it here, and I'll see you next month.